This is the voice of freedom. We are not one voice. We are many. We are your voice. But we can only be effective if you use your voice. Your voice. This is the voice of freedom. We will not hide from the truth. We will ask the hard questions until we are sure we have the truth. Welcome to the voice of freedom, where your voice will never be silenced. Well, g'day, folks. What an interesting day it's been. Election 2022, run and, well, lost, I think is probably the best way of describing what's happened. It's been a hell of a day. Just having a bit of a quick look at some of the news headlines at the moment. Difficult for ScoMo. He wishes Albo well in his concession speech. Something that we can all be thankful for, folks, is that Christina Keneally did not win her seat back. And thankfully, there is no way in hell she's going to be put in charge of anything in this country. Thank God. That's all I can say. The Liberals, you've got to say, are in a bit of a crisis at the moment. Peter Dutton's seat is resting on a knife edge, although they do have a lot of pre-poll and postal votes there that won't be counted until maybe tomorrow lunchtime. But there is every chance that if Dutton gets back in, he's about the only one left standing to run as the new opposition leader. Frydenberg, I think, will be gone. We've got to be pretty sure about that. There's a few interesting changes that have happened. One of the more interesting things that I'm finding is that they're already starting to blame excuses. They're already starting to set up climate as the reason that the Liberal Party didn't succeed. They didn't have, any great climate strength policies, and they weren't looking after those people who cry about the climate a great deal. Absolute bullshit. It's got nothing to do with the climate argument. That's just the excuse they're using. I see Peter here wants to know how Bosey did. Bosey, last time I checked, had about 1,800 votes. We're not taking too much from that. We realise that quite a lot of the votes probably aren't ever going to make it to Bosey, least of all in this current climate. The idea, we never expected Bosey to get in. In fact, we never expected, to be honest, any great number of A1 supporters to get in, or supported candidates to get in. This election has been made very difficult for independents to stand. It's been made even more impossible for them to go and effectively campaign, given the short amount of time and hoops they had to jump through. And certainly the preparedness on the A1 side of things probably could have been a little bit better. But this is just the first, and there will be another election. It may not be all that far away. So I wouldn't get too despondent about the whole thing. G'day, Daniel. Thanks. Yeah, spent a bit of time on with Guru tonight. That was a bit of fun. He opened the chat up. We had all sorts of people coming through. Look, we do believe that there is fraud committed in this election, and I'm not part of the team that is in finding that fraud or tracking how they did that. But I do believe there is a team doing just that. Our biggest focus at the moment should be for everybody who knows this election was fraudulently held, and it starts with the election writ. We don't need to go any further than the election writ to make the election untenable. Is the easy to prove, because the policies or the previous laws weren't followed. The writ wasn't published in 2 national newspapers a week ahead of time. The writ does not have a seal on it. There are, a lot of strange things about the writ. Not signed by the Governor-General, witnessed by the Governor-General. All of this makes the election null and void. So I would expect you might find that we'll be going back to the polls shortly. Probably not that excuse. They'll probably use the one about the ballots and the confusion and associated other things. But you might also find that a lot of the other politicians that were standing in this election aren't around anymore and won't be standing in the next one. That may be 3 to 6 months away, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. They've been rigging elections for longer than all of us have been alive. So you got to remember they've had a great deal of experience doing it, and that's not good. You're right. A has sent in a comment, says, "It's all a stage show." Couldn't be truer. It is exactly a stage show. This was a show event. It had to be followed through because you cannot arrest people for crimes unless they complete the committing of the crime, especially crimes on this scale. So essentially, what has to happen is we have to let the fraud occur, and then those who are going to make it right have them lock, stock, over the barrel. We caught you in the fraud. And that's what this is all about. It's catch 'em out. I've been saying for days, weeks, months, this isn't an election. This is a sting operation. So try not to get too down about it. If you've got people around you who are, pretty despondent or just want to get in and rib you because you're back to losing, independent party or that freak Bosey, don't worry about it. We're not, and it's not unexpected. And the fight is a long way from over. We haven't lost yet. Um, I still think that this week has a lot of things that are going to play out in it, and we should just be pretty happy. Mick, thanks for following. You're a big fan of our brother, the Cossack, and Ricardo. Well, I can tell you, we are working pretty hard on the Aussie Cossack. I'll give you a quick update on the Aussie Cossack. I wasn't going to do that, but I will. I was speaking with Mrs. Cossack this morning. She's bearing up. She's having a bit of a hard time at the moment, but there are a lot of people gathered around her, including the Bosey family, are gathered around her, trying to help her where they can. We all have our own concerns for Mrs. Cossack. I'm not sure that the public are completely aware. Mrs. Cossack is also on a hunger strike, just like Mr. Cossack. So the Aussie Cossack made it known when he was first arrested that he'd be on a hunger strike. Well, Mrs. Cossack is the same. Mrs. Cossack has also made an attempt to go to Silverwater Prison to see her husband. And when they found out that she was coming out to see him, they called her and advised her not to bother once she had been asked whether or not she was vaccinated or not. Of course, Mrs. Cossack is not vaccinated and therefore is not allowed inside Silverwater Prison to see her husband. Just between you, me, and the gatepost, the Aussie Cossack isn't jabbed either. So that's the laws of Silverwater Prison. Two unjabbed people can't meet up on a visitation for some reason. So they're just trying to make it hard. This is challenging for Mrs. Cossack. She's obviously very keen to see him, make sure he's all right. She has been receiving some very interesting and weird phone calls from people claiming that they're calling from the prison, asking for certain details about the Aussie Cossack, details that they ordinarily wouldn't have to ring up a partner to find out, details of, that sort of thing. So Mrs. Cossack's a very smart lady. She hasn't been involved with them beyond hanging up on them. But there's some interesting things going on in Mrs. Cossack's world at the moment. The Aussie Cossack, from all accounts, was classified yesterday and is now ensconced in his new home, which will be, in theory, for the next 6 weeks or so. June 30 is when he is due back in court, but there are plans afoot. I'm meeting people tomorrow, and we will be beginning a plan that may see him out on bail sooner rather than later. It may also see some other surprising developments, but we'll leave those until they come good a little bit later on. But let me tell you, folks, there's a lot going on in the world that you don't know about, and there's a lot going on in the world that I don't know about. But the stuff that I do know about that's going on in the world is very positive. And today's election result is not the negative that people might think it is. Trust me. There is a lot of really cool things happening in the world right now. How can there be any court challenges or follow-ups if they've all been bought and paid for? Well, there are certain people in the world who haven't been bought and paid for, and the courts that you're referring to might not be the courts that these people are fronted in front of, if you know what I mean. So our legal system has been compromised, is the best way of describing it, and it's been compromised from the top down. We cannot trust anybody in the legal system. We certainly cannot trust the police, and we have no reason to trust anybody above the police and the justice system. In fact, we have nothing but evidence not to trust them. So that is the other thing, if you're concerned about where this goes to court-wise, it'll go to a military court. It won't be coming to a civil court. It'll be a military court. And I look forward to the day that that happens. So too, I'm sure, does Ricardo. Now, if Aussie isn't jabbed, they're probably keeping him isolated. Yes, I'm sure they are, Daniel. That's a pretty big possibility. Although we are hearing anecdotal evidence coming out from people who might be in the same shoe as him that he is extremely popular and is able to mingle with other prisoners. So I don't know. It's only anecdotal. Don't really know. A lot of people come wandering out of there and want to talk about the Aussie Cossack. So I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully, Mrs. Cossack will be able to speak to him this evening or tomorrow, and I'll have a talk with her, and she'll bring us up to speed. She's a very shy lady, and I don't think I'll be able to convince her to come on. I've offered a couple of times, but I understand she likes being behind the camera rather than in front of it. So rest assured, she is very grateful for all the love that she is receiving. And can I tell you that the send Simeon a postcard, or send the Aussie Cossack a postcard campaign that we started the other day. This one is going great guns from all accounts. So if you haven't done so yet, go and get the cheapest postcard you can. You might be able to find one in a newsagent, $10 for, 10 for $1 or something like that. Grab that, stick a cheap stamp on it, and put a message on the back to the Cossack saying you're thinking of him and we're out here working for him. And we're looking forward to jamming up Silverwater's mail with bags and bags and bags full of postcards from the Aussie Cossack. So if you can get behind that, spend the dollar or the $1.20, whatever it is, to send a stamp with it too. That'd be really great. Everybody is getting behind it. They're very excited that something's going on for him. At any rate, we're going to keep him top of mind. Mick raises an interesting question. 25 million people in Australia, and it only takes 3 hours to count the vote. Got to ask the question. So, Mick, pre-poll votes, I believe, are counted at certain places ahead of time. So that's why at 2 minutes past 6 at the closing of the poll, I think Labor declared victory in 3 seats immediately. I think the Liberals declared in 2 shortly thereafter. So, yeah, those pre-poll votes, I don't know how it's legal. I haven't really checked into it. I thought all of the votes needed to be counted on the day. Now, it is possible, I suppose, that those pre-poll votes are counted in private during the election day somewhere else and ready for tally at 6 o'clock. That is potentially possible, I suppose. I don't know enough about the system. And like I say, the AEC didn't want me as a scrutinizer, or scrutineer, so that I could get behind the scenes and find out exactly how that worked, because that was the plan. But being of the great unjabbed variety, of course, I'm unacceptably too much of a risk to have not touching anything or anyone, but gazing over their shoulder. So anyway, that's how that worked out. Yes, Albo is Australians' Biden. Kristen has said, yeah, I couldn't agree more. He may not have the dementia yet; he's just stupid. So I guess we're going to wait and see. I actually think Anthony Albanese is going to have a medical episode in the next few weeks or months. And Tanya Plibersek and Tanya Wong, and Penny Wong will take over the leadership of the Labor Party. That has been on the cards for some time. It's only because the deal was done after the crud, red-headed clown Gillard crud mess, where they were knifing sitting prime ministers left and right from their caucus. They all came up with a deal, basically when they all thought Bill Shorten was going to win, that they wouldn't knife a sitting parliamentary leader anymore. And then, of course, our Shorten didn't get in. Albo was elected leader. And now Labor Party are hamstrung, having elected a fool for what they really thought was going to be another at least 2 seasons in opposition. Of course, the Liberals dropped the ball. They didn't look after any of us during the lockdown. In fact, they made it harder, and then they expected us to give them their jobs back. Just not going to happen, fools. Yes, I know, Mel, it's hard to believe Labor won. It's hard to believe there are that many people out there who just can't see through it. And maybe there aren't. That's the point we're trying to make. Maybe there aren't that many people out there who voted for Labor. I can't tell you that for sure. I'm I have my doubts, but I've had my doubts about elections now for many, many years. Um, Millions of late telephone ballots, says the Pinster. Well, I haven't heard anything about that, but that might be something I might have to go looking at. Yes, Mel, Dominion machines like in America. In fact, exactly like those machines in America. A number of them were delivered to Australia about 8 or 10 weeks ago. Uh, Not enough to be put into every polling place or every counting station. So what would have happened is those machines will have been put into the marginal seats where they could have the most effect on the outcome of the vote. Now, that might be 8 or 10 seats around the country. They will be key seats, key marginal seats, seats with potential for swings. So that's where those machines will be. They will have had an effect in those markets, but whether or not they've got enough of an effect on the nation, maybe not. I think it's pretty easy to suggest that the fix was in for the rest of the nation in other ways. The WHO allowed it to spread for 2. Oh, we're talking about. Yeah, well, okay. Let's have a chat about monkeypox, shall we? I'm only just starting to open my book on monkeypox because I laughed for the first day when I saw the first reports. It does look like a serious skin-to-skin disease. You won't have to worry about breathing in anything like that. It's only skin-to-skin transmission. It is interesting to note that the people that seem to have contracted it and are being monitored here in Australia are all fully vaccinated. That's just the only point I would make at this juncture. Everybody who's got it is fully vaccinated. So we know that they've jammed all sorts of things into their little vials and then jabbed that into us. Who's to say that monkeypox isn't exactly what was planned? I actually think the name itself gives it all away, but maybe we'll save that for another chat at another time. Yeah, interesting times ahead, says Pete. Yep, I couldn't agree more, mate. Very, very interesting time. And yes, COVID corruption auditor. I'm with you with that all the way. It's starting to get very tiring what they're doing to us, and I'm pretty much over it myself. So yeah, monkeypox. That's going to be the next big scare campaign, and that will be the trigger that the WHO use should the legislation be passed. Because we're steps away from this happening yet. So in Davos at the moment, the World Health Organization and the WHO are meeting. World Health Organization to change the wording of the treaty that will take a suggestion. Mainly, we could come and help, say the UN and the WHO. We could come and help in a pandemic. To we are running the pandemic, and that means that with the stroke of a pen, if somebody gets sick in Europe, they can shut down the world to come in, and they have UN troops, stormtroopers, stationed all over the globe, so that they can enforce that. And you heard, if you were on the Guru's channel earlier tonight, while we were talking, he's mentioning Shoal Bay as a base for those UN troops. I can tell you from personal experience that there is an awful lot of good military on the Gold Coast at the moment. There is also a lot of good military down around the northern parts of Sydney and some of the southern reaches of Sydney, particularly around army bases down that way. And when I'm saying there are some good people down there, I'm not saying that they're the ones that are normally working on the army base, just between you, me, and the gatepost. So yeah, that's basically the update at the moment. The Aussie Cossack still behind bars. We're cheering for him. Please send him a postcard. Let him know that we're out here working for him and trying to get his release. He will be overjoyed, beyond overjoyed, that Fiona Martin has been kicked out of Reid. Now, he happens to live in the Reid electorate, the Aussie Cossack, and has been working quite hard on exposing Fiona Reid, who has done nothing really in the time that she's been in Reid. And some of the more entertaining videos the Aussie Cossacks had out recently have been how he's been chasing her around the hustings, trying to, expose some of the goings on that she was responsible for. Mr. Bosey came about fourth or fifth in the election cycle, or in the seat. Um, if you look at the amount of votes cast, I think he had about 5% of the vote. Um, so it wasn't by any stretch a winning margin, but that was not necessarily the goal. I would say to you, folks, if you have ever seen an interview with Ricardo, with me, or with anybody else, if you've ever been talking to him personally, you'll see that he is an immensely calm individual, and speaks and acts like he knows what's coming. I have two words for you: looking glass. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go looking. Go looking for looking glass. Big tip, just between you, me, and the gatepost. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that Ricardo Bozzi has access to the looking glass, but I think he has access to people who do, just between you, me, and the gatepost. That gatepost is getting a flogging tonight. I've got to stop saying it. I do apologise. So Fiona Martin, did a runner, called the cops on the Aussie Cossack there. She absolutely did. In fact, he was responsible for some of the best gotcha moments of the campaign, the Aussie Cossack, I've got to say. When he found Liberals handing out Green how to vote cards and Greens handing out Liberal how to vote cards, and then asked them all about it, and they were all very confused and very embarrassed, and then all ran away. Still one of the funniest things I reckon I've ever seen. He would have had an absolute ball out there today. He would have been running around Reed following Fiona Martin. That's what he would have been doing. Although he might also have gone across to Greenway and found out where Ricardo was and offered a bit of support there. He did manage to mount quite a bit of support for Ricardo in Greenway. And that's what makes us think, when we look at the vote count, that there is something not quite right there. But we always expected there would be a lot of things not quite right, and probably, especially with Ricardo Bozzi's count. So don't give up, folks. That's all I'm saying. This is a war, and we're still fighting. We didn't lose today. We might have just won. It's just going to take a little while before we can get the evidence together and show it to everybody in a way that they will accept it. Because if you've been following me, if you've been following any of the other freedom people, you know that that's our battle. We have to get people to believe. We don't want to scare them into belief. We just want to give them something they can't deny. And they can't deny the fact that this election was illegal. There is no way that can be denied. So there is more things coming on the back of that. That's, I think, what we should all be very, very aware of. Anyway, look, it's getting pretty late. If you're in Queensland, you've probably spent the day under an umbrella. If you've been out, you can see what it's done to my hair. It hasn't been good at all. So I'll let you all go off to bed. Rest assured, I will be catching up with the Aussie Cossack's wife tomorrow. Mrs. Cossack, wonderful lady that she is, will give us a bit of an update. Hopefully she will have spoken to him today or maybe tomorrow before I get on, and I can give you another update about how he's feeling. But the last one that I have from him came via a lawyer that was speaking to him, and he's in very high spirits and being treated very well, he says, by both the other inmates and the prison staff. So that's the best we can hope for at the moment. Hang on, what do you want me to look up? COVID, Marcus Ray, Canada, 11 million armed Canadians going to remove Trudeau. Yes. Okay, well, we can speak about that. I know a little bit about that. So in Canada, most of what you're talking about there is a force that has been training now since the truck blockade ended in Quebec. Most of that militia is made up of ex-Royal Canadian Mounted Police and ex-Canadian military. And they have been training in far-out places in the bush in Canada, and God knows there is a lot of places they could go and practice and train and never be found in Canada. There is also another force similar to that in America, and I have heard stories that there is a force like that here in Australia, but I've not been able to confirm anything of the Australian story at all. I have certain contacts in the police, but I'd say that they are not quite the strength of truth I would rely on. I'd probably require quite a number of corroboration type pieces of evidence before I came out and said for sure that we had one of those groups here in Australia. Like I say, I've seen no evidence of it so far. It's not to say it's not happening. If you were going to do that here in Australia in this current climate, it would be a very dangerous thing to be doing. You wouldn't want to be sharing that information around, and you wouldn't certainly be wanting the authorities to get any wind of it at all. So if it's happening, it's very quiet, very, very, very quiet. And yes, if you are ex-military, JP7, thank you for your service, mate. Really appreciate it. And if you want to step up and serve again, as soon as I find out where we sign up, I'll be there with you. So I'm not ex-military, by the way. Some people have been asking me that. I have an affiliation with the military. I've been lucky through my radio career to have a great deal of experience with the military. In fact, I've probably done more things in the military than many people who got into the military have ever been able to do in their careers. I've been extremely fortunate in the access that I've been granted over the years to the military, and I have an understanding of how they work and whatnot. I have family who were involved in Vietnam, and that's pretty much my link. I was a very big fan of cadets, and when I was a young bloke, my career goal in life was to join the Navy, which I found out 4 years after I'd applied for and got rejected from, that I was actually accepted and got the wrong letter. So yeah, there you go. That's my life story when it comes to military. But like I say, been very lucky to do courses. I've been on tank crews and sniper courses and flown just about everything that flies in the military. I've been a very fortunate person with my access into the military. So I have a great deal of deep respect for our military members because I believe that most of them are very good, genuine human beings. There is just a bunch of people at the top that we have to get rid of, and we will. It'll come. It won't be the people who have to deal with those people. It'll be the other military, the white hat military, that deal with that. So that's the story on what I know about police and other ex-military groups, if you like, forming in Australia to try and, if you like, start a militia. I don't know that I said I'd join. Look, I don't know that I really would. I do not support a violent uprising. I want to make that very clear. We cannot win this with violence. We have to win this with brains and with evidence. There'll be many people, regardless of the quality of the evidence. We could have the gold standard quality evidence. There'll be many people here who will not believe the evidence we present, regardless of how provable it is. They just simply won't believe that people would act like they have to other people. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to convince everybody, but the goal has to be that we convince the majority. Because when the majority understand the true level of depravity that we've been subjected to, then we can start talking about trial by jury. That is giving the people back the power and putting government back where it needs to be in service of us. But we've got a little bit more to come on that. We'll get there. Have no fear. We'll get there. And if you want to learn about Magna Carta 1215 and particularly Article 61, the People's Protection Plan, then every Monday night on this channel, I have a friend join me called Fitzroy Sterling. Now, Fitzroy knows Magna Carta 1215 inside out. I know there are a lot of common law people who are following me at the moment. A lot of you base your arguments on Magna Carta 1297. It's a waste of time. You can't win. They built Magna Carta 1297. They know at exactly what point in your argument they can pull the pin out and take the legs out from underneath you. Then they send you back out again to have another go. You fork out more money. Their goal is to break you. It's not to let you win. They give you a little win here or there to encourage you to come back and spend more money. And when you get to the High Court and you've got to spend $200,000+ to get your argument even heard in front of the High Court, and you go broke doing it, they've won. That's how they do it to you. Well, under trial by jury, none of that happens. Trial by jury is free. There is no judge. There are no lawyers. I know, different, you know. Takes a little bit to understand, and that's why to be a juror in a trial by jury, you need to have a little bit of training. So if you'd like to learn about it, 7:30 tomorrow night, 7:30 Monday night, I beg your pardon, on this channel with Fitz and I. Lesson one's already up. It's we had lesson one last week, so go and have a bit of look on that. It'll explain law to you, natural law, common law, all sorts of different laws. Get that one down and join us again Monday night at 7:30. And we'll look forward to answering any questions you have and getting into lesson 2, which is always going to be pretty interesting. I think we will be there. All right. I will let you go, folks. I'll just have a quick scan in case there's a couple of really cool questions. Corporate government is definitely not legit, JP7. Thank you, Christine, for everything that you're saying. I really appreciate your thoughts. And look, I'm only trying to give people information because people are not getting enough of it, and you're never going to get it from the mainstream media. I know that. I used to work in it, so I do what I can. I don't. Also, please don't ever claim. Don't ever think that I claim to be a journalist. I'm not. I've worked with some of the best journalists in the world, but I have never been a journalist. I am a radio broadcaster. You can probably tell that by the amount of bullshit that I can speak, but I am not a journalist. I do have a very inquiring mind, and I like to think it's sharp, but that's been disproved on more than one occasion, I can tell you. So I'm always open to suggestions, folks, and I am here for you. LORE law. Dan, we will have a talk about LORE law, just not now. It takes a little bit of explaining for people who don't understand the difference between LAW law and LORE law. But yeah, very happy to have that conversation. Keep an eye out this week on machinations with the Aussie Cossack. We are very confident that the plan we have will see him extricated from his cell very quickly, never to return on those charges. The way we plan on doing this will be very surprising to many of you, but that doesn't mean it won't work. And the fact of the matter is, the court doesn't want you to know how we are going to make this happen. You will. And once you learn, you'll understand how powerful laws that have been hidden from you really are. So it's going to be an exciting week, folks. Chin up. It's all going to be good. And you don't see us panicking. You don't see Ricardo panicking. Nobody's worried. Nobody's upset. This is all expected. So, I really hope that you can get that too. Look forward to sharing more information with you as it comes to hand. And tomorrow, I probably won't be able to do much during the day. I've got to do a radio show in the morning, and then I've got to go and catch up with this fellow who we're working with for the Aussie Cossack release. That's probably going to take up most of my afternoon. So tomorrow night, I might have a little bit more news on that. I won't be able to share a great deal. We're not going to telegraph our punches too much, but rest assured, there is a lot happening in the background, folks. And Mrs. Cossack particularly is very, very, very appreciative of all your support. If you aren't already on the Aussie Cossacks Telegram channel, please go and get it and have a bit of a look. She's in charge of the Cossacks Telegram channel. She has no access to his YouTube channel. If she did, he'd probably be out already, just between you and me. But he doesn't want to remove certain videos off his site, and that is ostensibly the reason why he is still inside, because he's refused the judge's invitation to remove at least 2 of the videos off his YouTube channel. He may well have reconsidered that by the time we get to talk to him later this week. I don't know. He seemed pretty staunch on the idea last week, so I don't expect that's going to change. The Aussie Cossack is a Russian after all. Anyway, he's a good bloke, and we don't like to see him in jail. Although, if you're going to do a Darren Hinch, geez, I tell you what, he's putting us to the test. Doing a Darren Hinch is a difficult job to try and get anybody out of, because at the end of the day, the Aussie Cossack blatantly broke legislation, and he was warned not to. So any defense that he comes up with is going to need to be extremely powerful to get him any leniency, let alone get him out. So bear that in mind as the next week unfolds or so around the Aussie Cossack. I'm just having another see a few people have mentioned Mrs. Cossack here. Yes, Rakesh. Yeah, Morrison's gone. He'll resign tomorrow. There'll be a by-election in his seat. Frydenberg's gone. There'll be another well, there won't be a by-election in his seat, will there? That's been taken over by the Independent. I think Monica Ryan is going to clean up there. That will be an absolutely stunning result in Victoria for her. Yeah, Mel, you and I both think that that's going to be the end of the criminal governments. Yep, I hope so. We have to get to that point, but there is so much criminality in our government, and not just in the government, in the support services, in the bureaucracy. There are people who are acting in a criminal manner who don't know that they're acting in a criminal manner because the people that control how you act are teaching you to act in criminal ways to aid them. And they will support you acting in those criminal ways against us who point it out. So it's a deep fight. It's a deep fight, but it's not a fight we cannot win. It's very definitely a fight we can win. So don't be dissuaded. Don't be too down in the mouth about the result here. Certainly don't take any notice of the numbers because, well, it's just so shonky, the things that have gone on with ballots and boxes of ballots. And I won't get into it too much yet. There is a lot coming. Okay, we're only hours from the polls closing, and all the information and the intel is still coming in. But as soon as it comes to hand, I'm very happy to tell you about it, folks. Very happy to tell you. A note here from the Pinstar. St John ambulances are refusing to ramp ambulances from this weekend. Right. That's going to be interesting. Now, St John, Pinstar, where is that? St John, New South Wales, or is that St John nationally? I know St John Ambulance is in Victoria, I think, from memory too, and maybe in South Australia. That's going to be pretty interesting. I'll be interested to see how they're going to force that, because if the doctors and nurses don't come out to take the patients off the trolleys in the ambulance, what are you going to do? Just leave them at the door? So yeah, I don't know. Don't know how that's going to work. Be interested to see how that's going to work. Somebody posted up, where is that? Karen, thank you. Yes, 2,000 Mules Aussie style. Yeah, I kind of thought Rukshan might be behind filming something like that, but he's in Davos doing the big deal instead. So he and Avi have gone to Davos for a week to try and keep the bastards honest there. Got no hope of that, but they might get a picture of them being dishonest, and that's probably just as good. All power to them. Just having a bit of a squeeze for the last of the questions. Okay, have to call Health to reckon the state will run the ambos. Is that how that's going to work? That could be interesting. The state can't run much else, so we'll see how well that goes. What is the next plan of action, Mary says? The next plan of action for the next few days is Wait, Watch, Discover. Actions are already in place. I'm not sure if people are aware. There's already a court action in place. It's been going on for most of this week about the illegality of the election, based in part on the lack of a writ being published. Now, there are a few other areas that are playing a role in that case as well. They were never going to get it decided before the election because it would have been embarrassing to the government. Doesn't mean that they're not going to get a result maybe someday this week or next, and that too could aid in turning the whole election result over and being declared null and void. So that is just one case that I know of that's going ahead. I think there are 3 cases that are operating currently in courts in Australia, just refuting the legality of this election already. I know that Ricardo has already put in one formal complaint. I think there are more coming today. And folks, and here's the call out, if you went today to a polling place and you were told that you couldn't vote 1 above the line and 6 below on the Senate ballot paper, then you were lied to. And that is fraud. Now, you need to make a formal complaint to the AEC if that was given to you, if that direction was given to you. The more people that make a complaint like that to the AEC, who I think are probably one of the most corrupt organisations we have, but they can't hide the fact that we've sent so many complaints because so many people have had this happen to them. So if you've had something like that, you've not been able to argue your point successfully when you knew that you could vote 1 above the line and 6 below instead of 6 above and 12 below, or whatever it was. So I think there is going to be a good avenue of appeal there coming up too. So Don't give it up, folks. There is a lot of really, really, really good things coming our way. Um, I know it doesn't look like it at the moment, but it is. There is a lot of positive stuff happening in the world that you're not aware of, or for that matter, that I'm not aware of. So I don't think I've got any great inside information on that. I get some info now and again, but I can't tell you where, when, or how. Unfortunately, nobody can. That's part of the beauty of this. It's such a compartmentalized operation that left hand really doesn't know what the right hand is doing until they all meet in the middle and shake hands. And I think that shaking of the hands, when all those elements come together and meet, isn't far away. Isn't far away at all. Teal parties were funded by Simon Holmes at Court. Oh, yeah, Climate 200, very definitely, absolutely. Labor stooges, the whole lot of them, Labor, Chinese stooges, and yeah, a vote for any of the Climate 200 is a vote for Labor and the Greens. So yeah, that's not too much fun. Nasara Jasara, Susan, Nasara Jasara. I'm told that at the moment Australia is going through its revaluation. So that, from my understanding, and I have a very limited understanding, so please don't take what I'm saying as gospel. My understanding is that Australia is currently going through its revaluation. Now that happens out of the public view, but it will align the Australian dollar with a gold-backed base that will align with the rest of the world. Once that's happened, then Jasara is, in theory, ready to roll out across Australia. I'm led to believe that Australia is one of the last countries that it will be rolled out in, but they're working on it right now. So that's another pointer that we are nearing the end of where we're at. What do I know about it? Look, I know people who are in it, working with the QFS. They don't talk very much. Well, how many accountants do you know that do? But yeah, they don't. They're not talking much about dates or times or time lapses. But if you look at everything that's happening, you can sort of bring the puzzle together. So it's sooner rather than later. I hesitate to put a timeline on it, but I would say sooner rather than later. That's where we're at with Nasara Jasara. And if you don't understand what that is, folks, start doing some research. Jasara is global, Nasara is national. You figure out what the rest of it means if you don't know. Someone has asked about the Vanguard Group. State Street and BlackRock control everything. Yep, you're right. They exist because people choose the system. I'll put this up rather than have my eyes go stupid. They exist because people choose the system. Exactly right. If we can't change the system, we must leave it and start our own. 100% correct. Couldn't agree more with someone. Now, we do have a lot of systems we could start. People are concerned that there might be anarchy if we, when Ricardo was said, "Oh, let me in, I'll tear it down from the inside." There was never going to be any anarchy. The prison doors weren't going to be flung open, and the criminals weren't going to be allowed onto the street. In fact, the only criminals that the prison doors that would have been flung open was to accept new criminals being let in there. So yeah, don't get too caught up about that. There is a lot more in the back end of that I really I don't know enough about to explain at this point. I think is probably the best way of doing it. Oh yeah, angel wings. Oh yes, you were offered a pencil and declined. I hear that. So you brought your own pen. God bless you. I think many of us should do that, and I did. I took my own pen. Um, I got a strange look when I was offered a pencil and I just held up my pen, but they didn't stop me. So that was a good start because I would have got pretty vocal if they'd have bothered trying to stop me there. All right, just having a bit of a look down. No, more askings about how Ricardo went. Well, Ricardo wasn't elected. That's the easiest way of putting it. But we never expected Ricardo to be elected. In all honesty, it's not the kind of seat where he was probably going to be able to get up unless there was some significant cataclysmic event. But he did make an impact, and the Aussie Cossacks certainly helped him make an impact in that area. The biggest news, I suppose, in our little group is that the Aussie Cossacks attempts to rid himself of Fiona Martin out of the electorate of Reed seems to have worked. So he's pretty happy about that. Um, oh, yes, we need to burn down the UN offices. I couldn't agree more with you on that either. The UN is something we need to extricate ourselves from immediately, if not sooner. But while that twit Albanese is running the country, that's never going to happen. We did talk to Ricardo last night and asked about what would happen with the UN, and he said, once the people are in charge, there will be no UN. I couldn't believe that more. That's exactly what's going to happen when the people wake up. Things like the World Health Organization, the World Economic Forum, and the UN. Well, most of those members will be swinging from ropes or standing in front of firing squads. So we won't have to worry too much that. Did any A1 candidate get elected? Not at this stage, no. What did happen, though, quite surprisingly, in many of the A1 supported independent seats, they've come in third or fourth behind the two majors and maybe a One Nation or a UAP. So they've actually polled very strongly, considering that none of these people have ever stood before for the best part. I think Ricardo is the only person who'd ever stood before. So they've done pretty good. We'll sit down and we'll analyse that further over the coming weeks. I think it will show that there was a huge level of support for independence in those particularly regional areas. I think it was shown on the coverage tonight on telly that the regional areas have really punished the Liberal Party. That's where they've lost a lot of those seats. And those regional areas have been hurt very hard by the pandemic, the lockdown, the lack of tourists, and the complete oppression that the Liberal government has shown us over the last 2 years. So, the pain has come for the Liberals from the regional areas. I've not really had a good close look at Queensland to see how that's gone yet. I'd be interested to see how the Katter Party went and whether or not they got back in up north. So yeah, look, there's going to be a lot of analysis that's got to go into what's happened with our individual candidates' votes. But I think for the most part, everybody will be very, very, very happy with the significant dent that we made. Of course, the plan being with the vote the majors last and put the independents first was to share as many of those preferential votes among the independents rather than having them fall down into the majors. And I think that has been very, very successful. Everybody today, even the politicians, have been talking about the mood for change. Now, I'm surprised that the result is as it is, as we all are, especially when senior politicians from both sides were saying, oh, God, nobody wants to vote for any of us. They knew this was coming. So, yeah, there's a lot going on in the background, folks, and things are being counted. Laws are being broken. People are taking note of those laws. Complaints are being made. Charges are being filed. So, yeah, it's not over yet. Roses and raspberries. The sleepers, let me see here. The sleepers will end up waking up in the most shocking ways. Yeah. Yes. That concerns me. A lot of us have copped a lot of shit from these people who have developed a holier than thou attitude toward us because we've decided to exercise our right to decide what goes into our bodies. Now, I know that's been very hard for a lot of people. It's certainly been hard for me at times. Although I've been one of those people who has been not shy. I've not worn a mask for the entire time, except for one particular reason where I did it more for well, not to ruffle certain feathers in my world, but that was about the only time that I ever wore it. And it wasn't a real mask. I had one made up, just had the Hulk on it. So it wasn't even a workable mask, but it gave me something to argue about people with. So that worked out all right. So masks and all that sort of crap probably coming back. Watch out for the monkeypox. Monkeypox at least at this stage, only seems to be coming in vaccinated people. If you've just joined us, we were talking about that earlier. So monkeypox springing up out of nowhere. World Health Organization having a meeting about it tomorrow to, see what they can do about it. Interesting that just happens to coincide with the changing of the wording for the UN whole lockdown thing. Don't get too worried, folks. I think if the UN came in stormtrooping Australia, there's going to be a lot of Australians who stand up, and whether we have a gun, we have a pitchfork, we have a slingshot, we will put up a fight. They're not going to come in and do this to us. Have no doubt. Yeah, monkeypox. What a name, hey? I mean, where did it come from? The monkeys. Yeah, just like HIV. Angelina has put up. Yeah, HIV. You remember all the stories? The Grim Reaper. AIDS came from some bloke having sex with a monkey in a cave in Nigeria or Kenya or somewhere. It didn't. It came from a lab. The patent for HIV is owned by Anthony Fauci, and is listed. You can go and find it in the U.S. patents list. He owns it. He designed it, or he helped design it, and they helped spread it. So that's just one of the many diseases this bastard is responsible for, and the deaths that he is responsible for probably outnumber Hitler's. So bear that in mind before you start, accusing people of all sorts of wrongdoings. Anthony Fauci has probably killed more people than Hitler. Think about that. All right, so UN vehicles are all over Australia. Yes, I haven't seen too much evidence of that, Kanga. Kanga 1776. If you've got pictures, I want to see them. If they're UN vehicles, they're white with black lettering. They are making Bushmasters in Brisbane and painting them white with UN lettering. Now, we've been told that those are being made under contract for Indonesia. I think there's about 70 of them. Now, believe that? If they were for Indonesia, why would they be painted white in UN? Interesting questions. They're made, if you're at all interested and happen to live in Brisbane, they're made down in Pinkenba. So you can actually drive past and have a look in. Go down and cruise past and have a look. I see too the Australian government today sent another 20 Bushmasters to Ukraine, along with some other weapons and associated other bits and pieces, so far bringing our commitment to something like $285 million. How many of us are homeless? How many of us can't find anywhere to live? How many places could the Australian government have built for $285 million that would put a roof over the homes and heads of mothers, fathers, and children in Australia who tonight are sleeping in their car because they can't afford the insane rents that are going through the roof? I'll give you an example. A friend of mine on the Gold Coast, coming to the end of their lease in 3 months' time, have just received their lease renewal. Their lease is going up from $650 a week to $830 a week. From $650 a week to $830 a week. Why? Did the owner put in a new pool? Did they get a gold-plated driveway? No. There's just demand. That's what it is. $285 million going over to Ukraine that could have been spent on Australians, putting a roof over Australians, feeding Australians, giving security to Australians. Today, we elected another government who's just going to keep feeding the Ukraine beast our money. Maybe we need to think about that before the next election. All right, folks, I'm going to leave you with that tonight. I'm absolutely knackered. It's been a long day, and tomorrow's going to prove to be another long one. There's a lot of big things happening tomorrow. So I'll bring you up to speed with that tomorrow night when I get back from my meetings, and let you know the plan of attack from there for the Aussie Cossack at least. And hopefully I will have a bit of an update from Mrs. Cossack about him and how things are going for him in Silverwater. I don't expect he's going to be having too many troubles there. He's a pretty likeable bloke when you get him going. He's got a pretty good sense of humour, and Well, let's face it, he's about 7'10" and 14 foot wide. He's not going to get into too many fights in there, I don't think. All right, folks, you sleep well tonight. I really thank you very much for taking the time to bother to listen to my ramblings for the last, how long? 54 minutes. Um, if I've helped you at all, I'm happy. Um, my entire goal here is to keep us all informed with what I know. Um, not to let you get too despondent after what's happened today. There are still plenty of good things happening in the world that you don't know about. There are plenty of good things in the world that I do know about that I wish I could tell you about. There will be a day. We will share that with you. But right now, if we want to get the bastards, we got to do it quietly. So we will continue the fight on behalf of you and everybody else. Thank you, folks. Have a lovely night. Thank you very, very much for your support here. If you haven't already done, like and subscribe. I've got to say that because the Cossack's wife is now getting up me if I don't say it. So please like and subscribe, and look forward to hearing any suggestions. If you want to get in touch, you want to come on and have a chat, I'm more than happy to have people on who want to come on and have a chat. So if you want to do that, maybe we'll set up a night one day next week. You can, I'll post up the link. You can all jump in and have a chat with me. I'm happy to answer as many questions as I can, and do what I can to keep everybody entertained. Have yourself a bloody good night. Enjoy your Sunday. I hope it's dry where you are tomorrow. I think we're expecting another 17 inches of rain here. It's not fun. But whatever it is, whatever you're doing, make sure you do it safely. Be safe on the roads and kiss the one that you love, won't you? Thanks very much, folks. This is the Voice of Freedom. My name's Carl Liebold.